There is a question many people have never dared to say out loud. Why is it that some people only need to hear a sad story to feel their eyes well up with tears, while others can hear the same story and then continue eating dinner as if nothing happened? If you are someone who cries easily, you have probably asked yourself this before. Why am I like this? Why do even small things make my heart ache? And even worse, why do some people look at you as if you are overreacting? You may have been in a familiar situation. A movie has barely reached its emotional peak, and you have already quietly turned your face away to wipe your tears. The person sitting next to you glances over and smiles lightly. What is there to cry about? The sentence sounds simple, but it feels like a small judgment. And slowly you begin to doubt yourself. Am I too weak? Am I too sensitive? Is there something wrong with me? But here is something interesting that few people tell you. People who cry easily are often not the weakest people in the room. In fact, they are often the ones who experience life the most deeply. When others only see a story, they see the emotions behind that story. When others only hear words, they hear what is left unsaid. And when others simply pass through a moment, they feel the full weight of that moment. To put it bluntly, people who cry easily are not necessarily weaker than others. They may simply be feeling more. And the uncomfortable truth is that many people out there are actually feeling less than they think. They are busy, guarded, and emotionally numb without even realizing it. So if you are someone who tears up easily, you may understand people more than you realize. In this video, we will unpack a question that many people carry with them their entire lives. Why do some people cry more easily than others? And the answer may make you see yourself in a completely different way. But before we continue, if you have ever been called too sensitive, stay until the end of the video. Because there is a truth about people who cry easily that very few people notice. And once you understand it, you may never look at your tears the same way again. There is an uncomfortable truth that many people do not want to admit. Not everyone who cries easily is weak. And not everyone who rarely cries is strong. Sometimes the difference simply lies in how each person's brain processes emotions. If you are someone who tears up easily, your mind may be operating through a mechanism that many people around you do not even notice. The first thing to understand is that emotions do not only live in the heart, as many people assume. They are processed in the brain. When something happens, the brain evaluates how meaningful that event is. For most people, this process happens quickly and quite simply. They see something, react a little, and then continue with their lives. But for people who cry easily, the brain often works in a deeper way. They do not just receive information, they feel it, they imagine it, they connect it to their personal experiences. It is similar to watching a movie. Some people only watch the story, but others actually live inside the story. That is why an emotional scene in a film can bring one person to tears while another person simply says that the movie was pretty good. Another important factor lies in empathy. People who cry easily often have strong empathy. When they see someone suffering, their brain almost mirrors that emotion. They do not just understand another person's sadness, they feel it. This is why they can become emotional when hearing a sad story. A song can make them fall silent. A kind sentence can stay with them for a very long time. If you have ever felt a lump in your throat when seeing a stranger go through something unfortunate, it does not mean you are weak. It simply means your empathy system is more active. Another mechanism that people rarely notice is how sensitive individuals process memories. People who cry easily often connect the present with the past. A simple sentence can trigger an old memory. A small situation can remind them of a deep experience in their life. So when emotions appear, they are not just a single feeling. There are many layers of emotions stacked on top of one another. That is why sometimes even they do not understand why they feel so overwhelmed. Another factor is related to the nervous system. Some people are born with a nervous system that is more sensitive to emotional stimuli. It is similar to how some people are more sensitive to sound or light. They did not choose it. Their nervous system simply reacts more strongly. Interestingly, this sensitivity does not only apply to sadness. People who cry easily often feel joy more intensely as well. A beautiful moment can move them deeply. A sincere compliment can stay in their memory for a long time. In other words, they do not just feel sadness more deeply, they feel life more deeply. But in a society that often celebrates emotional detachment, people like this can easily feel different. They hear familiar phrases like, "Do not be so sensitive. Be stronger. There is nothing to cry about." And after a while, many people begin to believe that their emotions are the problem. But the truth is that emotions are not a flaw. The problem is not that you feel deeply. The problem is that you may not yet understand how to manage those emotions. When a person understands their emotions, sensitivity is no longer a burden. It becomes the ability to understand, the ability to connect, the ability to see things that many people overlook. Many people with high emotional intelligence are also people who become emotional easily. They can read the atmosphere of a room. They notice sadness in someone's eyes. They can sense when someone is pretending to be okay. That makes them good friends, good listeners, people who have a deep understanding of others. And here's the part that few people tell you. People who cry easily are often the ones who think the most deeply. They do not just react to life, they reflect on it. Sometimes this makes them more tired, but it also helps them grow in a very different way. If you are someone who cries easily, you may have thought that you are too sensitive. You may have tried to suppress your emotions to be more like the people around you. But there is a question worth thinking about. What is truly stronger? A person who feels nothing, or a person who feels everything but still keeps moving forward? The answer may not be as simple as we usually think. If you recognize yourself in what was just described, try doing one small thing right now. Write the word understand in the comments below. Not to prove anything to others, but simply to remind yourself that there are many people out there who experience the world in the same way you do. And if you want to understand more deeply how sensitive people truly think and experience the world, subscribe to the channel now. In the next video, we will talk about a rather harsh truth about sensitive people that very few are willing to say out loud. There is a truth about tears that is both a little ironic and worth thinking about. People often say, "Be strong, stop crying." But what is interesting is that the people who say that are sometimes the ones who do not know how to face their own emotions. And that is actually far more concerning. In reality, crying is not a sign of weakness. It is simply a sign that you can still feel the world around you. Someone who is never moved by another person's pain, by a sad story, or by a moment that touches the heart is not necessarily strong. Sometimes they may simply be becoming emotionally numb. People who cry easily often think there is something wrong with them. They blame themselves for reacting too strongly. They try to suppress their emotions so they can be more like everyone else. But the irony is that this very sensitivity is what allows them to understand people more deeply. They notice small things that others overlook. They sense the sadness behind a forced smile. And they are often the best listeners in a conversation. In other words, they are not weaker. They simply feel more. So, if you are someone who tears up easily, it may be time to stop seeing it as a flaw. It may simply be the way your mind responds to life in a more genuine way. But there is one important thing that few people tell you. Sensitivity is a strength, but only if you understand it. When you learn how to manage your emotions, that sensitivity becomes empathy, connection, and a deep understanding of people that very few possess. So if you have watched until this point, try doing one simple thing. Subscribe to the channel now. Not because I am asking you to, but because the next video will talk about a rather uncomfortable truth about sensitive people that you may have never heard anyone say out loud.